I will say, I was telling Richard this before we filmed. I got through my whole analysis about like, this is why this thing isn't a machine gun. And also, this is what happened, which we're going to talk about in a second. This is the decision that the Trump's DOJ came to that they're all complaining about. And none of it is what you're saying. And the answer I got back was, well, why do we even need these things anyway?
We are the Armed Attorneys. Today we're providing an important update on forced reset triggers, FRTs. Are these things legal now? Well, there's been quite a few developments. We want to get you up to speed on it. But before we begin, show your support for the Second Amendment by hitting that like button. And if you're not already, especially you Texans, jump on the Armed Attorneys newsletter. You can find it at armedattorneys.com. We're going to be giving lots of legislative updates when it comes to what's happening in the Texas House. The session is almost over, so you won't want to miss that.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, but FRTs, I've gotten a ton of questions on these.
Yes, well, you may have noticed if your social medias are not cleaned up to the point that basically everyone agrees with you, you will probably notice that people who do not like guns have widely been crying big sloppy tears about how the Trump administration has just legalized machine guns. And I used to think that arguing with the anti-gun side was a good idea. I used to feel like I could convert people. Like, listen to reason. Listen to reason. I give up. I quit.
I just think of the time vampire from What We Do in the Shadows, who gets his energy for arguing with people online.
No, I just need, you know what? Surround me with my own people in my echo chamber.
Yeah.
That's all I need.
Well, all right. So we have a couple of different things going on. The first, I want us to harken back a little bit because this is going to be the core to all of this. And it's the 2024 Cargill v. Garland Supreme Court decision on bump stocks. And in that case, our Supreme Court said, guess what, ATF? You've completely overstepped your authority to redefine what the Congress has defined as a machine gun. And that is really, I'll say, the backbone to all of this.
Yes, it is, because we took Cargill versus Garland and applied it to the FRT sitch that we were facing, because the idea remains the same. The ATF took something, right? Because if Congress wanted to legislate these things away, hypothetically, pending Bruin analysis, hypothetically, Congress could do so. Congress could say, it's illegal to have an FRT. It's illegal to have a bump stock. And there would be a Bruin challenge, but that's not what happened. What happened was the ATF said, we have a definition of machine gun. It's actually one of the clearer definitions included in the U.S. code, and we're going to take that beautiful definition, we're going to shove in a bunch of stuff that doesn't fit, and we're going to say, it's machine gun, we get to take it away from you. And it was the exact same analysis, the exact same reasoning. And so Cargill had a huge effect on the ongoing FRT litigation, because you will recall that after they took all our bump stocks away, they immediately turned around and took all our FRTs away.
Yeah, and so how did this work? Well, Congress writes the law. It's what we have in the United States Code. The agencies attempt to fill in the gaps and interpret some of these things, maybe not so much now in the wake of Chevron deference getting struck down. But what the ATF did is they just added on to, they used to kind of be mirrors of each other, machine gun. Well, they added all this material about harnessing the energy and, to rope in bump stocks and all these things. And all right, so that was part of the argument.
Right.
The government also was speaking out of both sides of its mouth and just saying, hey, look, this still falls under the traditional definition of machine gun. They're kind of arguing in the alternative for both of these things. And we got the case, National Association for Gun Rights v. Garland. If you want to check this out, this is in the Northern District of Texas, 423-CV830. And that's where we got to the straight answer of, hey, these things are not machine guns.
Right. And just to be clear, I mean, if there is no ambiguity in the law, then the authority to make the rule to shoehorn a bunch of stuff in is not there. And that's essentially what happened here. Because I know a lot of people are probably thinking about, Chevron deference and about how Chevron deference going away might have applied to this or contributed to this. And this was not actually a Chevron issue, because in order to even get to Chevron, you have to find that the U.S. code is ambiguous such that they get to rule make and they get to interpret the law for their own selves. And by they, I mean all of the three-letter agencies who get to rule make.
And now the courts.
and now the courts, right? So now, once the agency does that, the court doesn't have to say, okay, agency, we have to defer to your own interpretation. Now the courts get to decide. But again, if the statute as written is not ambiguous and does not need to be interpreted by the agency, then it's not ambiguous. And so we don't even get there. They've overstepped their rulemaking authority, which is exactly what happened here.
Yep. So, and FRT's not a machine gun.
Not a
They
machine
figured
gun.
out, hey, guess what? We have more than one function of a trigger. Function of a trigger, one bullet expelled, one function, bullet expelled. So they got there on kind of a technical analysis.
Yes.
And so great, fantastic.
Which I was trying to explain to the liberals on the Facebook. And I was like, you hold the trigger back on a machine gun and you hold the trigger back on an FRT. There's a big old difference about what happened, and it's the operative difference. I will say, I was telling Richard this before we filmed. I got through my whole analysis about like, this is why this thing isn't a machine gun. And also, this is what happened, which we're going to talk about in a second. This is the decision that the Trump's DOJ came to that they're all complaining about. And none of it is what you're saying. And the answer I got back was, well, why do we even need these things anyway?
Yeah.
Which I guess is like the whiny man response when you can't figure out, like you've been so thoroughly scolded that you don't understand the law and you don't understand what happened. And so then it's like, well, why do we even need it? Because this is America.
Yeah, that's how the Constitution's written. We get all of our permission from government.
It just is. I'm still floored. This
But-
argument happened like a week ago. All right, go on.
All right, so great decision, Northern District of Texas on appeal. Well, in the meantime, Trump gets elected into office. New Department of Justice, task force initiated to look at these Second Amendment infringements. They looked at this case and they have now entered into a public settlement to abandon the appeal.
Yes. So Pam Bondi was directed to reevaluate all the current litigation, figure out what they were going to do with it. And we have looked at this. The Trump administration has looked at this and said, we're not going to waste taxpayer dollars on this. Why are we pursuing this appeal? It is very clear, and we're up. Let's not.
Yeah.
Let's not.
Well,
so here we are.
And part of the settlement, so they're not pursuing the appeal. I mean, there are some burdens placed on rare breed. They're not going to be making FRTs for pistols. They have their own, they've kind of, they gave up something, I imagine, to get this settlement. But I would say the big headline here is FRTs, no, not criminal, effective, that decision in National Association of Gun Rights, appeal abandoned. This thing is over with.
Yes. Yes, my goodness. Now the question is, how do you get your FRT back from the government that you relinquished?
Yeah, we'll throw that up on screen, link it in the description below. The ATF, if you received one of those kind of violation letters, they have instructions on how to get your FRT back. It sounds like they're going to be treating these things kind of like firearms, doing background checks, whatever. Okay. If you want your FRT back, they have that process there. But going forward, they're not going to treat these things as machine guns as they have done in the past. The dust is kind of settling on this. Now, the other thing that folks need to be aware of is, all right, even though feds are backing off on this, some states have still chosen to criminalize bump stocks, forced research triggers, these other things. You got to be careful of that.
Yes. I don't have a full list for you here, but if you live too far west, too far northeast, or in the bonkers state of Florida, you've probably got problems. So check your state's law.
All right. And a question from the comment section that I'm telepathing. These folks who surrendered their FRTs were confiscated by the government. They interfered with their property rights. They're going to be entitled to some just compensation for this taking, right?
No.
I'll let her deliver the bad news.
No. And by all rights, you should, but I guarantee that you will not. We live in a world where takings done happen all the time. In fact, that is one of the things that I was so outraged about when the bump stock rule came down, is I was like, this is a taking. This is a taking.
I did a bunch of research on it.
And it is, in fact, a taking.
It is, but this is what the government was relying on is all the still cases
from the prohibition.
Yeah, from prohibition.
But that was a consumable.
Right.
I mean, it's totally different. Anyway, no. The answer is no. And they're going to justify it 1,000 different ways that make zero legal sense. And they're probably going to win because they are the government.
Yeah.
So, no.
But FRT is back on the menu, potentially, if it's legal in your state. But we hope you enjoyed this discussion. If you did, consider subscribing, hitting that like button, and help us fight the anti-2A algorithm by sharing this video.
And leave us a question or a comment below. And if you are a Texan, specifically sign up for our newsletter. We're going to keep you updated on this dwindling, maybe okay for guns session in Texas here at our legislature. Until next time, we're the Armstrongs.